Have you ever noticed that the general public tends to be weirded out by knife enthusiasts until all of a sudden they need one and you're the only one in the room that has one? If that's you, make sure you tap the like button. My friends, I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. Like this Bestech Exploit, designed by Todd Knife and Tool and manufactured by Bestech. Bestech was kind enough to send this one my way for review. No, I do not get to keep it, and no, it will not affect how I rank this knife today. You see, in the last couple weeks that I've had this knife, it's given me the opportunity to get to know it, to dive in deep. And now that I have, the only question left to answer is the Bestech Exploit a grail? Or is it garbage? So if you're new to how grail or garbage ranking works, here's the current leaderboard and explanation. So we have 5 categories. The 5 categories are materials, ergonomics, fidget factor, the lock, and of course, fit and finish. Each category has a potential high score of 10, and at the end, we will go ahead and add them all up. If it scores between 21 to 30, it's a low recommend. 31 to 40 is a high recommend. And anything over 40 is a grail. Currently, we have only one grail ranked on the channel. If you're someone who has a knife that you want me to rank, or if you're a manufacturer, retailer, knife maker, and you want me to rank your knife, make sure you hit me up. My email is in the description below. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, guys, this one has been a long time coming, and I've just been ready and waiting to rank this knife. And you know, I've carried it a decent amount. I haven't really done any harsh cut tests with it. I have cut some paper to make sure that the edge is ground well from the factory, and trust me, it is. But yeah, I just wanted to do my due diligence, because initially when I got this knife from Bestech for review, they also sent me this one. Do a little side-by-side comparison. This is the Nixie, this is the Exploit. They are both front flippers. They both have a carbon fiber show scale and a titanium scale on the back. And you can get both of them in full titanium if you want that, or if you want a little bit less weight reduction, you can get the ones with the carbon fiber show scale for a little bit more. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. Initially, during my versus video where I compared the two of these, I initially thought that I liked the design of the Nixie better. And don't get me wrong, they're both great knives. I really don't think that you can go wrong with either. Having had the chance to both carry and check out both of these, my opinion's changed. I actually prefer the design from 2 years ago. Despite the fact that it does not have a crowned spine like the Nixie, and despite the fact that they didn't get the jimping as right as they did on the Nixie, where, you know, with the front flipper, it really is beneficial to have the tighter jimping at the top of that front flipper. And on this one, you could tell that they hadn't necessarily figured that out yet. Despite those two things, I actually do prefer the Exploit over the Nixie, now that I've had a chance to actually look at it. And this is why I don't rank knives the moment I get them, you know, or even within a few days. I want the opportunity to actually, oops, there we go. I want the opportunity to actually carry and check them out before I give my final opinion. And that's what these grail videos are for. It's for my final opinion after having a chance to check it out, so that you don't have to buy a knife and then wonder if a week later, 2 weeks later, your opinion's going to change. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first category. The first category, of course, is materials. Now on materials, the score is based and weighed heavily upon the price. So if you want this version, that's the version that has the titanium clip side and the carbon fiber show side, the big benefit is that you get carbon fiber, and so it's going to be a bit lighter than the full titanium version. Now, between you and me, I do actually prefer full titanium. So, be that as it may, everyone has personal preferences, and I try to keep my own personal bias out of it as much as possible, just so I can give you as much context as possible. We're looking at carbon fiber, titanium with titanium backspacer, titanium pocket clip, S35 VN steel, and hardware that is all T8. That's so nice. Both Todd Knife and Tool and Bestech got it right. I don't want to have to switch drivers if I need to take this apart. I just don't. And you know what? You don't have to, because every single one of these body screws is in fact T8. That's so cool. However, the price, if you want the one with carbon fiber and titanium, you're going to pay a bit more, like I mentioned. Currently on White Mountain Knives, you can buy this knife for $255. If you use one of the many knife reviewers discount codes out there, you can save 10%. So you can get basically 25 bucks off. And so you'd be getting this for about $230. Yeah. So you'd be getting this for 230 bucks for this version. If you're okay getting full titanium, or if that's the one you want, you can get it for $238. So 10% off of that, you'd be looking at basically $215. $215 for a knife with titanium, full titanium in S35VN, or titanium and carbon fiber with S35VN. I think that's a pretty fair price. Granted, this has been out for a few years now, so the price has dropped. This is not what they released at. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and score the Exploit at what I would consider to be a very fair 7 out of 10. Same materials as the Bestech Nixie. They get the same score. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think these materials are great. I know many people would argue that, they want M390, they want 20 CV, they want some other kind of new super steel that's, a bit more new than S35VN. But I'll tell you what, plenty of high-end custom knives these days are still made with S35VN. It's something that is really quite a good steel when it comes to knives and performance, and it's honestly, S35VN is what I would consider a premium blade steel. So I'm not necessarily sad about that. I don't wish that this had M390, although at that $200+ price point, it would have scored better if it did. So yeah, the next category is ergonomics. How does it feel in the hand? Is it something that's comfortable to hold on to? Can you get a good grip? Can you change grips? If you hold on to it for extended periods of time, is it going to leave sores on your hand? Are you going to regret stabbing into that block of ice with it? Don't stab into blocks of ice with this knife, guys. If you need a knife to do that, you know what? There's plenty of sub $100 knives you could do that with. But yeah, I'm actually very surprised by the ergonomics on this knife. I think that it's rather good. Despite the harsh lines here and here and here and here and here and here, everything is actually knocked down pretty well. Could they have done some contouring on this? Sure, but it may have ruined the aesthetic if they had done that. So ultimately, I'm not too angry. Where the Nixie had a really nice crowned spine, this one does not, but it does have some very useful forward jimping on the spine of the blade so that you can get in nice and deep on those cuts. You can get that extra grip, and it's not harsh jimping. It's not going to make your fingers feel uncomfortable, and hard gripping on this doesn't leave your fingers feeling uncomfortable either. It is easy to hold on to because of those harsh geometric lines, but it's part of the styling, and it's something that I actually really enjoy. Part of the ergonomics, surprisingly, is the pocket clip. It's one of the reasons why I bag on Spyderco pocket clips so much, And I'll show you on this one. This one's a beautiful 3D milled pocket clip, and because of how it's milled and positioned, you don't really feel it when it's in your hand, and that's perfect. I don't want to feel the pocket clip. The pocket clip doesn't owe me anything in the ergonomics department, and honestly, if I don't feel it at all, that's a good thing. So even though the spine of this blade does not have any crowning on it, it does have some forward jimping, and the handle scales are a little bit more comfortable than the Nixie. So even though it's doesn't feel as refined as the Nixie, it's going to get the same 7 out of 10 for ergonomics. The next category is fidget factor. How much do you want to take this out of your pocket and play with it? Does it have options that are addicting? Does it meet those standards? Gosh, I'm still bad at front flipping, excuse me. How's the action? How's the detent? Those are all things that come into play when we talk about the fidget factor on a knife. Well, the detent is actually pretty strong. In fact, when I first got this, I was having some issues getting that to flick out because it was such a crispy detent. And it could have just been that this specific review model has been in storage or hasn't been flicked in a while, or it could have just been that I hadn't gotten the full run of the place yet. That being said, as you can see, it's really good for the reverse flick. It is, of course, a front flipper, so you can do all of those regular front flipper tricks, unless you're me. There we go. So it's quite fidgety. And because of the badass aesthetic on this knife, it is fun to whip out and show your friends, which I don't necessarily suggest doing, but you can, of course, do that. This knife is comfortable enough in the hands with the ergonomics where sustained fidgeting over time will not necessarily leave you feeling too bad, and this lock bar does not get in the way for general fidgeting and flicking out. And the action is good. The thing about coated blades, whenever you have a black blade, if you do not fidget with it a lot, that black blade will not have as good of an action naturally as a regular satin finish because it has that extra coating that needs to be worn in with that, either the washers and or the ball bearings like this one has. This one does have ball bearings, so at the end of the day, even if you never oil this thing, the ball bearing will wear a path into the tang of the blade, and it will get smoother and continue to get smoother over time. The detent on here is good, and I feel like it has definitely softened up since I've had this in hand, and since I've went ahead and played with it plenty. I'm actually very impressed with the fidget factor on this knife. It's enjoyable, it's addictive, you have options, including this fuller right there, so you can actually flick it off of the fuller, you can do the front flip, you can do a reverse flick, you can go ahead and slow roll it out if that's really what you want to do, but I don't really know why you'd buy this knife and then slow roll it, but maybe you just don't want to concern the neighbors. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, this is going to get a solid and well-deserved 8 out of 10 for the fidget factor. Very, very impressed with how this thing is broken in and fidgeted with over the last 2 weeks. Now, we're down to 2 categories left, and the one that we're on right now is the locking mechanism. Just like with the Nixie and with most Todd knife and tool designs, this one is a frame lock. And let's check out that frame lock, shall we? See if I can't get that to focus in. There we go. So the frame lock on this is a little bit early. I'd say this is about a solid 20%. The camera's not really showing it that great, but it's about a 20%. So it's a little early on the lockup, but I don't feel any blade play up and down, left or right. There's no lock rock. So that lock is definitely solid. Now, frame locks are definitely a great option. Steel frame locks specifically are making a comeback these days, but this one is a titanium frame lock, and it does have that lock bar insert so that the titanium doesn't wear down sooner than that hardened metal of the blade. Steel lock bar inserts are definitely important, and I appreciate seeing them. The lock bar does not get in the way when you're playing with it, and part of that lock bar is actually the detent. And see how quickly that detent sucks that blade in. It's crisp, it offers nice punch so that when you go to fire it out, it fires out quickly and with authority. This fire out just about as fast, if not faster, than any automatic knife. That's one of the reasons why automatic knives, in my opinion, are somewhat superfluous, because with a regular non-spring assisted blade, you can get it to fire out just as hard. See if I can do that right this time. There we go. In fact, the detent was so crispy when I first got this that it was actually, for me at least, a bit reminiscent of an automatic, because it was firing out so hard with that crispy detent. So for those reasons, and because even though it's a great frame lock, it's still a frame lock, nothing super special, but it is well done. So for that reason, I'm going to give the lock a 7 out of 10. Whew, there we go. Okay, we're on to the final category. That final category is fit and finish. How did it come from the factory? And honestly, I don't think this specific one has been reviewed a whole lot based upon how it performed when I got it initially in the mail. It felt like I was one of the first few people to check this knife out, and maybe possibly the one that's checked this specific unit out the most, because everything just felt crisp and brand new, like it still needed to be broken in a little bit. The edge was sharp. There's no offensive edges on here except for the blade itself, which honestly, the blade should be sharp. It's the only part of the knife that should be. It's comfortable. Bestech does a really good job with fit and finish, but part of fit and finish is also how well was the design realized. And Todd Knife and Tool also goes by Zelric here on YouTube. Make sure to check out their videos. They do such a great job with their designs. They're somewhat futuristic, and I know that some people are going to be like, hey man, and this design just isn't for me. And you know, there's a lot of that in the knife world, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's all personal preference. I don't think this looks like a gas station knife. I think it's actually pretty moderate, and I'll give you an idea of what I mean. Also, just for comparisons, I have to compare this against the Spyderco Manix 2. This is the Spyderco Manix 2. Now, check this out. Forward finger choil, forward finger choil. Grooves in the handle scale, grooves in the handle scale. Spear type flat ground blade with deep plunge line. Spear point flat ground blade with deep plunge line. Deployment hole, Spidey hole. Guys, I can't help but draw comparisons here. I mean, don't get me wrong, this one definitely costs more, and it has, in my opinion, more high-end materials, because instead of just G10, you get, you know, titanium and titanium or with carbon fiber. And yes, this one does have a fuller, but this is like a more futuristic version. This is Fred Flintstone, and this is the Jetsons. Just gonna throw that out there. Now, I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other. There are other differences, and I don't believe that anything is truly original in this world anymore, even with Spydercos. But I could not help but make that comparison. I do like the pocket clip better from stock, and I do like the materials better from stock, and I love the fact that this has a fuller. Maybe one of these days Spyderco will wise up and start putting fullers in their blades. I don't know. That being said, I loved making that comparison, because after a minute, I just started seeing them and seeing the similarities in those knives, and I think that it's great. I like the fact that this isn't just a flat slab. I like the fact that we get these crazy speed holes in the handle scale, and on this side, those speed holes are beveled, so you get a little bit of extra dimension in there. And especially on this one, you see that it came pre-worn around the edges. That pre-worn look is gorgeous, and I really, really like it. I also like the fact that we get a backspacer for this blade. Like, come on, when you have a flat grind blade, that blade is exposed if you don't have a backspacer. Things like keys and coins and anything else in your pocket could damage that edge, and I don't know about you, but I like it when my knives stay sharp. So yeah, I definitely think that the fit and finish on here was well actualized, as was the overall design. I'm not disappointed, and in fact, after I send this back, I will be considering buying one of these for my collection, because I think that it's a great knife, and I could do with a few more Todd Knife and Tool knives in my collection. I really do enjoy this knife. Maybe I would get one full titanium, maybe not. I like the extra weight saving feature that having carbon fiber on here is. And the longer I have a carbon fiber and titanium model, especially this one with the worn finish, the more I like it. It's definitely growing on me. So for that reason, guys, fit and finish is going to get a very solid 8 out of 10. Now, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I felt like this knife was actually better than the Bestech Nixie. I think they're both great, just to be, on the honest side, but I do feel like I like the Exploit better than the Nixie personally. If you disagree, put it in the comments down below. If you had to pick between these two knives, which one would you pick? Maybe you'd pick neither, but if you were to pick one, which one would it be? So remember, the Bestech Nixie got a 36, which is still a high recommend. It's right there in the middle of the high recommends. The Bestech Exploit, in my opinion, has better fidget factor. I said it, I don't regret it. It is what it is. And everything else is pretty much the same aside from that fidget factor. The Bestech Nixie got a 36. The Bestech Exploit is getting a 37 to edge it out and be right there in line with the Spyderco Yojimbo 2, and also as a high recommend. Were you surprised by the ranking? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you think this ranking system needs some reworking? Let me know in the comments section down below. But other than that, my friends, that's all I've got for you today. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, boo-hoo, there's a button for you too. And if you want to see more content just like this, make sure you hit subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you on the flip side.